Well, we've talked a bit of politics this morning and culture war this morning, and the platform, I guess, since it's been on air, has been part of that discussion, and we've tried to represent parts of our national political debate that don't get covered or hadn't previously been covered or given concern. And one of the people who's helped us do that and look at the changing sands or tides of politics has been Bryce Edwards from the Democracy Project Political Lecturer at Victoria University. And I just thought today, given everything that has happened in the last couple of weeks, it would be good to catch up with Bryce again and see what he's making of it all. G'day, mate. How are you?
Good morning, Sean.
Look, I want to start with that green state of the planet, pretentious bastards, that speech yesterday. Boy, they have decided there is no point being anything but sort of hard left, haven't they?
Well, they're certainly positioning themselves more to the left. And you have to remember that they're under a lot of heat at the moment. So they're being criticised, especially from the left and especially from their own supporters, for greenwashing this government. And so there's been calls for James Shaw to resign. There's been, he got rolled, of course, during the last year by his own supporters as co-leader. He managed to get back in, but nonetheless, there's a lot of discontent from those in the party and to the left that the Greens have become, too interested in the cushy jobs, ministerial jobs, and not actually doing what they're supposed to do.
And part of this alignment by Hipkins, Bryce, I guess Shaw could have justified his cabinet post saying this gives us a seat at the table and we can advance some issues that are important to us. But, when push came to shove, Hipkins has basically, I don't know that he's got rid of it all, but he certainly put the Green initiatives on the back burner in the interests of the Labour Party.
Oh, absolutely. Look, he's pulled back on some of the things that Ardern was doing. He argues, of course, that a lot of the stuff wasn't actually going to do much and it was pretty ineffective, but it was going to cost a lot of money and it was going to, there was all sorts of problems with some of these green initiatives. And so, the Greens sort of rolled over and they let that happen. They didn't put up much dissent, and Shaw got a lot of criticism from some of his supporters for being too much of a lapdog, even to Hipkins. So he's kind of having to, under pressure, show that he's not a lapdog. But, just like so many minor parties, the Greens have got their comfy jobs and they really want to just show how responsible they can be and how, well they can, work.
Bryce, I wonder if the answer in terms of an electoral answer prior to polling day isn't for James Shaw to resign and the Greens to walk away from being part of this Labour majority government. I'm wondering if that isn't, the political gesture that's needed.
Look, that's what a lot of the Green base would like, but James Shaw, is just not in him to do that sort of thing.
Really, you reckon?
No, I don't think so. No. Well, maybe if he feels so threatened, he might have to get more radical and do those sort of things. But no, he's no Winston Peters. He's it's not in his nature. He wants to be seen as a person that can be done deals with. He's not like that at all, I don't think.
Yeah, but Labour, I'm sure Labour would understand it. I mean, they threw Jacinda Ardern on the pyre in their political interest. I'm sure they would forgive James Shaw for petulantly storming out.
It's not going to change anything. We have a majority government that doesn't need the Greens. So yes, it would be good for differentiation purposes. It would show the Greens to be an independent party. So yeah, you're right. That could be effective for their base, but it's really, the Greens have to show that they're going to be a harder coalition partner in the future, and that's really what this was signalling on in the speech, that you can't take us for granted. We're going to be that tougher when it comes to the next negotiations. I doubt they will be, but it's what their supporters need to hear.
Yeah. They also said it was going to be the climate change election. They're looking for this nuclear moment. I wonder if it is. I wonder if the tide isn't going out on climate change as we see Greta Thunberg withdraw her tweets and serious questions being asked about the hysteria around climate change.
Look, there's no doubt at the moment that in public surveys, people are saying cost of living and the economy is their major concern, and that's way above anything else. But second on the list seems to be climate change, and that has increased, especially after some of the weather events.
Which weren't related to climate change.
And so I think there are a big part of the public that do think they were related, and they want to vote for a party.
That's because they've been told lies by the mainstream media, though, Bryce. It's been horribly misreported, unfortunately.
Well, I don't know.
I do, because we've done stories on it. We've done stories on it, and Gabriel wasn't a climate change event, and it actually wasn't that unusual. But what was unusual was the forestry issue. For example, everything that happened in Esk Valley could pretty well be put down to that. And I guess too, with a Labor government that wants to be bread and butter, they just don't have the same fit they used to have with the Greens, do they?
That's right, and that could be good for the Greens, and the Greens are seeing that as an opportunity to move more to the left, emphasise that they're the real party of the left. But to what extent it's going to work, I don't know. The Greens haven't been doing particularly well. Their latest One News poll was pretty good. It put them on 11%, but the one before that for Courier put them on 5.7. And if you average all the polls, they're on about 8%. So that's not particularly good if it's the case that people are really concerned about climate change. They're not turning to the Greens. But
the cult of Chloe Swarbrick in Auckland Central means they don't need to get to 5% to be back in, do they?
No, so I'd say she's got a very good chance of holding that, and they're not vulnerable to that 5%. But if this is a climate change election, if that is the biggest issue of the day, the Greens have to kind of explain why very few people are wanting to vote Green. They seem to say everything's running in their interests, that people are concerned about the climate, yet only 8% of us, think the Greens are the answer. Yeah.
Also, very, very, I'll say, an aggressive speech by James Shaw. He doesn't always carry off aggressive particularly well. But what would you call it? The most reactionary, was it racist? Did he use the word racist government? I mean, that's right. If that's setting the tone, it's not particularly high, is it?
No, so the parties are getting down on the dirt now, and often the best form of defence is offence, and really he's saying, look over there. I want to scare my supporters into voting Green because we are the people that are going to.
We're not Nazis, is what he's really saying.
Yeah, we're not Nazis. And we're the people that will call out the Nazis, because Labor's not going to call ACT the most racist. I don't think they are party ever, and they'll leave it for the Greens to sort of make those big, bold escalating statements.
Yeah. Look, let's talk co-governance too. We had a meeting in Orewa over the weekend that thankfully was peaceful, and it seemed both sides, while there were heightened emotions, nothing got physical, and the police, if you like, held the line between them. I have long said that this is an issue that is going to cause division and be a bit of a flare point for politics in this country, particularly this election. And I note, I don't know, your views on that. I also note that Erica Stanford came out in a television interview and basically said the National Party is practising co-governance in its own caucus. And I'm wondering for the main parties, if co-governance isn't a boat that in reality has sailed. We have co-governance in New Zealand and it's going to be hard to turn around, or if there is, or there can be a genuine debate on it.
Look, Chris Hipkins is really quite right when he says that co-governance is a bit of a useless word, and it means so many things to different people. And there's some examples of it that, I think there's some sort of consensus amongst the politicians, or most of them, about, such as, some governance of some national parks and resources. So there's just a huge different varieties of co-governance. And so we do need a proper debate, a bit more nuanced than we're having at the moment, about the way forward on this. I'm not sure the politicians are going to give us that debate, because I think it's in their interests mostly to shut it down. It's a dangerous area. I'm surprised that National's taking that approach at the moment, but there we are. It's going to be good for ACT. It's going to be good for the Greens, I think, because they're the sides of the debate that are most kind of polarised, if you like. They have distinct things to say. The Greens are very pro, and Te Pāti Māori are very pro co-governance. ACT is kind of the voice of most dissent against it, which kind of makes it sound like it's a left-right dispute. I'm not really convinced it is.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people on the left that are very uncomfortable with co-governance, and you look at people like Chris Trotter, old-fashioned sort of lefties that think, actually, there's a bit of a democratic problem with co-governance.
Yeah, I may not be able to tell you what co-governance is, Bryce, but I can tell you what it isn't. It's not democracy.
No, there's some parts of it that just are the opposite of democracy. Absolutely. So you're right. And there's huge public concern about it. And yeah, the problem is there's not a nice place to have a I'm not really sure that this tour around the country is going to bring any light to the issues at all. So
they're having a crack at it. Just very quickly before we go I talked to Matt King from Democracy New Zealand today, one of the small parties, and they flare up on social media and they get very excited about themselves. Do any of them have a snowballs? I mean, Matt King said, I can get Northland, I can beat whoever stands in Northland. Is anyone else really a player this election?
Well, I think we don't take minor parties seriously enough in New Zealand, and we don't give enough attention to some of those micro parties, those fringe parties, and we do a disservice when we, don't give them enough oxygen, because we've got this, monopoly and whatever in Parliament where
duopoly. It's like the supermarket chains, isn't it?
It is, and even the Greens, and they try and keep the other parties out. They try and put up whatever barriers there are, and so I do think the news media also, doesn't give enough voice to some of those other groups and give them a chance to grow. But I have to say that I can't really see any of those Democracy Now, other fringe parties around vaccine-related things or COVID-related things really getting any more than, a few dozen thousand votes. I guess what I'm saying is less than 100,000. Yeah. And so, no, they're not going to make it. None of them really has any likelihood of getting in. I think the Brian Tamaki party is quite instructive in that they're not really trying to get into Parliament. All Brian Tamaki's doing is trying to give his churchgoers something to sort of believe in, get involved in, pledge money to. I don't think Brian Tamaki has any ambitions of getting into Parliament. He doesn't want to. He just wants to give his congregation something to be, to be active in, to keep them involved in the church.
Yeah, I hear you, Bryce. Hey, look, just one last thing. The Stuart Nash stuff last week, I don't think a hell of a lot of people outside the Beltway really care, to be honest. But it is the first kind of misstep, I think, by Chris Hipkins. Do you think this woke to bloke trend, this turnaround is going to continue or not?
I mean, I agree with what you're saying. Sorry, I'm not quite getting the woke to bloke part.
The rebranding of the Labour Party appears poll-wise to have been successful. The question is that a dead cat bounce? Is it a trend? Have they actually turned the tide?
Oh, they've absolutely turned the tide. and they say they aren't focusing on the distractions. But yeah, this was a major blow, I think, to Chris Hipkins' narrative. But he knew that he can't afford to get rid of one of the more popular MPs amongst the provinces, amongst all the parts that the Labour Party can't really appeal to, with their more urban metropolitan sort of image. So they needed Nash. They can't afford to have him totally sacked, even though I think he should have gone, and it was a mistake.
Yeah.
In a sort of an integrity sense, I think he had stuffed up enough that he needed to go.
Yeah, it's politics. Don't worry about integrity, Bryce. Hey, always good talking to you, mate. We must catch up in person soon. That is Bryce Edwards, political lecturer at Victoria University, leader of the Democracy Project. And, pretty close to, I think, one of our best political commentators, just giving us, and he crunches a lot of data and he reads a lot of polls, maybe a little left, but, as long as you know that, you can take what Bryce says and you can get a lot out of it.